Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth ETP4HPC webinar. I am Pascal, ETP4HPC's Communication Manager, and I'll be your host for this session and the timekeeper as well. I have a colleague to help running the show. That's Maike. You can see her here too, and she will host the second part of the webinar. So a few words about housekeeping at the beginning. This webinar is in listen-only mode, so don't be surprised. You can't talk, but only the speakers can speak. This webinar is recorded, and you will receive the link. So you will receive the link to the recording later today. And on your own computer desktop, you should see on the right-hand side the GoToWebinar control panel. That's illustrated here. So you can use it to ask questions or send your remarks in the question pane. You can submit questions at any time during the presentations. I will answer online whenever possible, and we'll have a global Q&A session at the end of today's session. So here is today's agenda, but before I go over the agenda, I would like to say a word about ETP4HPC. For those of you who are not familiar with our association, I will introduce it very briefly. ETP4HPC is a non-profit association that promotes European research and innovation in high-performance computing, HPC. And we are a private member of the Euro HPC JU, and that's the organization in the European Commission that addresses HPC, to make things simple. And so we propose research priorities for Europe in the area of HPC. I mean, research areas that should be funded. So back to our agenda. So today we have invited Sparta, which is a pilot cybersecurity competence network, and we're very happy to welcome their strategic director, Florent Kirchner. He will introduce Sparta and explain how they handle their roadmap, which is different from what we do at ETP4HPC. And then we will discuss together potential collaboration paths. But as usual, we will start by welcoming a new member of ETP4HPC, and today that's GraphCore with Kalina Boshkanova. So let's go to our new member, GraphCore. Kalina, are you ready?
Yes, yeah, let's start.
So here is your presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Kalina Boshkanova, Senior Marketing Manager at GraphCore. And today I'll be giving an introduction to our company, GraphCore. Next slide. Great, thanks. So a very quick introduction. Here is a little bit about us. GraphCore develops processors and compute systems specifically designed for artificial intelligence and machine learning workloads. We provide hardware technology as the IPU processor and software as the popular software and development tools as part of a complete solution to enable innovators to solve current and future machine learning problems. We launched our first generation PCIe card-based products, which are delivered via IPU servers today. We have announced back in earlier this year our second generation processor delivered in IPU M2000 products and IPU pod rack scale products, which provides scalable deployments in small numbers that can ramp up into 10,000s of systems for supercomputing scale out. We are building products and solutions architected in hardware and software for the demand of today and tomorrow in machine learning and artificial intelligence. We at GraphCore design silicon specifically architected for the needs of ML and AI. These devices are called intelligence processing units, or IPUs. IPUs are fundamentally different from the historical architecture that have been on offer today, like CPU or GPU. The design of the IPU is analogous to the makeup of our brains. We put processing, memory, and intercommunication side by side. In a similar way, our brain have neurons and synapses tied together. We understand to really make your hardware perform at maximum of its potential, you need to make your own software. So we build and supply the software, Popware software stack, we call it Popware software, that actually power the IPU technology. Together, we deliver our IPU hardware and Popware software in a platform so that they're plugged in and play for customers to simply install and deploy and be thrilled. So we have our IPU server products we offer through the third-party tier 1 OEMs such as Dell or Inspur. We also have rack scale products for scalable deployments in small numbers that can ramp up into tens of thousands of systems as suits the requirements of the customers. Next slide, please. Great, thanks. Okay, so Graphcore is now a very well established and well-funded company, having raised nearly $500,000 in funding. We have a broad and impressive range of financial and strategic investors, including BMW, Dell, Microsoft, Bosch, Samsung. Yes, next slide.
Sorry about the slides, but there seemed to be an automatic slideshow.
Quickly about, yes, where we are presented actually. Graphcore are headquartered in Bristol, UK. Bristol is a historical semiconductor startup, home of lots of semiconductor startups in the UK. We have R&D centers across the UK in Cambridge and London, and also a big R&D center in Oslo, Norway, specializing in very high-speed networking, plus European locations in Paris and Munich. We have also sales and technical support offices and staff across North America, office in Palo Alto in the Silicon Valley, Seattle, Austin, and New York. And we also have strong presence in Asia. Actually, we have a big office in China, in Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. And across Asia also, we have offices in Taiwan, South Korea, a big presence in South Korea, I would say. And we recently opened an office in Japan, in Tokyo. Next slide. Yeah, great. At Graphcore, we have developed the IPU, so the innovators can create the next breakthroughs in machine intelligence. This is an entirely new hardware architecture that is specifically designed for to support AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning workloads. And it is particularly favorable to the advanced higher accuracy models. That is where the future of machine learning is heading, actually. We are really excited about that, what we can achieve, and we are looking forward also to working with ETP4HPC and its members to help you all building the next generation of machine intelligence systems. And the last slide is thanks very much for inviting me today. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or check out our website at graphcore.ai.
Thank you, Kalina. Sorry for the slide changing, but I think there was a timer, so it made trouble. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Kalina. I forgot to say before you started presenting that Graphcore was a full member of ETP4HPC.
Yeah, exactly.
So if any of you is interested in what Graphcore is doing, if you have ideas for potential collaborations with Graphcore, you can contact Kalina. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's move on to our focus topic of the day. Maike, I hand over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Pascal. So as Pascal pointed out, our main topic today is the Sparta project, which is a project on cybersecurity. And Florent Kirchner, who is today with us, is his coordinator. So Florent is head of department at Cerealist, and Cerealist is focusing mostly on technological innovation for digital systems. But I think he will shortly present him now and then give tell us something more about Sparta, and then in the remaining 15 minutes of this webinar at the end, we can have a more detailed discussion with him. Thank you very much. So I hand over to you, Florent, pardon.
No worries. Thank you very much, Maike, for the kind words and introduction. Let me just share really quickly, making sure that you get my slides, and if you can confirm that you have visual on the presentation. So just a few words, I guess. So I'm first of all a scientist, and my work is mainly focused on software cybersecurity. And over the past few years, I've been taking a few responsibilities, both as a program leader in cybersecurity and as a head of department here within a department that's focused mainly on software engineering tools and systems engineering tools. And you can see there's kind of a correlation between the tools that we're using for system and software engineering and the issue of ensuring the safety of those same and security of those same software and systems. And so over the past few years, I've been involved in various cybersecurity initiatives, including local initiatives here with the Systematic hub on cyber and security. I've been involved also with the ALIS-10 working group of academics in cybersecurity at the French level, conducting one of the leading cartography of competencies in France around cybersecurity R&D, and over the past few years been contributing quite a bit with different types of organizations at European level, one of which you might be familiar with, which is EXO, which is the Cybersecurity PPP, that was launched a couple of years ago and that is terminating its mandate this year. So those have been interesting times, and this has, in a way, led up to the launch and the execution, the current execution of the Sparta project that you can see on screen. Now, Sparta is a cybersecurity competence network. We will get into this in just a minute, and I'll try to explain to you, give you some context of where this comes from, why the Commission wanted to have such a project going on, and then dive into a bit more details around how we elaborate the roadmap and maybe open up to different questions about how we intersect different roadmaps and how we move forward. Feel free, of course, to note questions, especially if you want to use the chat to write down a few questions. I'd be happy either to go through those questions at the end of the webinar or during, if I can manage to multitask here. So first of all, let's take a few minutes to explain what Sparta is and where it comes from. It's important to understand what the context is for this initiative. And the main starting point was a call for proposal issued in 2018 by the Commission to establish a cybersecurity competence network. And the call for proposal called for specific pilots to experiment with different ways that we can reinforce the capacities to secure economy, to build more competitiveness in the system, and to protect the citizens from cybersecurity issues. And overall, and it was quite interesting to see this at the time in 2018. Already in this call was the notion of European strategic autonomy, which is, since 2020, has been a very more widely discussed topic. But you need to keep in mind that at the time, such an idea was kind of, if not provocative, or at least a bit forward-thinking at European level. Now, to us, this was quite exciting because, as I said, myself and a number of my colleagues in the Paris area, but also at national level and also at European level, had been thinking about different ways that we could contribute to building a better future for cybersecurity in Europe. And that meant that we had to find ways to challenge ourselves and to change the way that we organized to be more collaborative, to be more focused, to be more impact driven, and overall to kind of try to change the overall dynamics of what we're doing in cybersecurity. And I'll say quite a few words about this topic later on if you wish. Now, in parallel to this call, so this was a call for proposal. And in parallel to this call, the Commission started drafting a regulation, the regulation that you see on screen, where the proposed regulation proposed the establishment of 3 different bodies. A Cybersecurity Competence Center established unique place in Europe, a network of national coordination centers, networking the different countries and member states and coordination centers in member states under the authority of the European Competence Center, and of course the interaction with the cybersecurity competence community, which already exists in Europe, and which needed to be a bit more let's say a bit more organized to tackle the issues at hand. And so there were a few ideas on exactly how those things would interact, but those are high-level ideas. Coordinate work of national competence centers, perform community building activities, input activities to the work plan. But overall, and you could recognize a few key ideas here, that there would be a research agenda and some projects going on. That expertise and access would be also discussed at the community level. But those were rough ideas, and the main question was how can we, as we go towards these pilots.
Florent, your screen has gone dark.
Yeah, so that's on purpose. Don't worry.
Okay.
The screen is dark, and I just wanted to introduce a brief pause here. Why is the Commission thinking about such an organization? What is at stake here? And what caused this? So let's take a few steps back. Okay, the current situation, especially around cybersecurity, is undoubtedly problematic. You don't need to have a look at specialized journals and articles to see, even in the press, in the general public, that we're having a lot of cyber attacks on the way, and the impacts of those cyber attacks are very wide-ranging. It's not only that those impact the traditional lucrative, financing and banking infrastructures, but also it now impacts, things such as civil society and voting capacities and those types of issues. So we're now in a world where the situation is problematic, and where the race to defend our infrastructures is very difficult. It's highly problematic, and not only do we have to win a race against the attackers, but if we want to maintain strategic autonomy and some kind of a competitive edge in Europe, then we need to also be faster, not only than the attacker, but also than the other defenders elsewhere in the world, and to come up with innovative ideas, innovative solutions from the European standpoint that can take a competitive advantage on the global market. And there are many factors in achieving this, but one of the possible factor, and I would argue one part of a significant part of being successful here, is to show that we can out-innovate, out-research the competition on this topic. And it's particularly important and particularly difficult in cybersecurity, where the rate of innovation is quite high compared to other legacy domains. But that's the case for computer science in general, but it applies to cybersecurity. Now, in this context, if we want to get faster, if we want to get better, what is the issue? Well, the problem is, to get faster in Europe, it means that we need to leverage not only our competencies, but also to build up critical mass. And the observation by the European Commission in 2018 was that the ecosystem, especially around research and innovation in Europe, was quite fragmented. We had very high-level publications, high-level scientists, high-level engineers who knew what they were doing, but there was not enough critical mass. And in order to be able to establish partnerships and build world-leading capacities, we needed to establish that network. And in Sparta, we took this idea and we said, okay, what is missing behind those two steps is to provide a framework for people to disrupt the state of the art, the current status quo. Because we need to innovate so quickly, we need to be able to have a framework and a set of projects where we're able to shoot for the moon and enable risky and complex development while requiring concrete results. And that's what we call, what is called usually the doctrine of strategic surprise. Enabling strategic surprise requires such kind of disruption. And we intend to build this, and we've been building this for the past year and a half on both the notion of open leadership and diversity and inclusion. I'll get into those details a bit later on. Our mission statement is on the left. We aim to shape the technologies that are required to establish European sovereignty and strategic autonomy. And if you want to have a look at the definition of strategic autonomy here, and we can have a few discussions about what this means later on if you have any questions. I won't stay too much on this slide, but this is the core idea of what we're doing in Sparta. Now, if we wanted to have kind of a motto, we would probably be shooting for the moon and trying to say that we want to preserve the role of the European Union as a leader in cybersecurity, especially to conduct peaceful activities inside and outside of cyberspace. I think that's one of the key areas where we want to achieve some significant results. Now, to do this, what Sparta does is it not only provides a roadmap, but it also shows how you can execute that roadmap and what kind of processes you can put in place as part of the research and development efforts to enable significant innovation, disruptive innovation on a series of topics. And so to do this, you start from the roadmap you see on the left. And then you source those ideas, you check those ideas, you source them, and you source the teams, launch them into execution, get the results, and loop back to the initial roadmap. And this whole pipeline, flowing ideas to innovation, is something that in Sparta we have now been experimenting, and we're continuing to experiment for the next year and a half now. And more specifically, since we didn't have an unlimited budget, we have a 16 million euro budget, but that's not unlimited. So we've launched 4 important actions and 4 important what we call research programs: T-Shark, Cape, Haiti, and Sapphire, focusing on what we believe are key capacities to enable European strategic autonomy in the domain of cybersecurity. And I have a more detailed description here. I'll leave it with you if you're interested. I don't have time to go into those details. But you have to keep in mind that the way that we built those ideas were to identify clearly the objective, explain that we had the requirements that were needed, and especially that these requirements were building on very strong European strengths, that we were measuring the impacts correctly, and especially that those impacts were strong in the European strategic autonomy sense, and that the capabilities that would emerge from those research and innovation programs would be capabilities that are key in the future of European strategic autonomy. So that meant focusing on key areas such as supervision, that's T-Shark, evaluation of systems, that's Cape, the building of new systems, Haiti, and the inclusion of artificial intelligence as part of new targets of attacks for cyber warfare. So there's those ideas were quite key, and we're identifying this was the result of the roadmap. I'll say a few words later on in just a few minutes on how we came to these. But the most importantly, and what I'm very proud of in Sparta, is that we not only have a roadmap, but also have the means to execute on that roadmap and on the key priorities that we've identified as part of Sparta. Now, This is on the strategic side, on the research side, but of course those operations have to be supported by a series of enablers. I've talked about the roadmap, and I'll focus more on this, so I'll skip this part of the slide. But we've also put in place a whole governance on how we should organize work within such a European competence center, especially because cybersecurity is such a sensitive topic. We've strived to put ethics, legal, societal aspects as first-class citizens in how we govern those actions. This doesn't mean that we have a naive and idealistic view of cybersecurity. It means that we have an accountable way of dealing with cybersecurity, and we know that this is a complicated topic, and that we need the tools, especially around ethical, legal, and societal aspects, to be able to handle that complexity. Beyond Sparta, we've also been lucky to attract a number of partners beyond the initial 44 partners in Sparta. And we now count more than 100 additional partners coming in, discussing with us, exchanging with us on how they can move the needle either on the roadmap or helping with some of the technical work, or working on, for instance, governance in some cases. And finally, developing a roadmap is a technical roadmap is good, but it's not sufficient if you don't have the skills, the human skills and the human capacities to operate what will come out of your roadmap. And so one thing that is also very remarkable in Sparta is that we've been very successful in providing tools for skills and capacity building in Europe, and providing in particular with strong ties with European agencies, providing ways to think about what is the curriculum that is needed to ensure that the capacities in cybersecurity are met as we move forward. Now, and there are a number of additional enablers. We can discuss this if you're interested. The high level view is this, right? So the overall composition of Sparta is an initial group of 44 partners working on this topic, establishing the first version of the network, and being enriched with what we call Sparta partners and Sparta friends. Two different levels of involvement within Sparta, depending on the capacities and the timing for many of our partners, that enable people to interact with Sparta in a way that is detailed. I want to call your attention especially on who is contributing to Sparta. And one thing that is quite remarkable is that in these lists of partners, what we have is not only people from academia, not only research and technology organization, but we also have major industrial partners. You can see Thales is here, you can see Leonardo is here, you can see that SAP in Germany is here. But not only do we have those large partners, we also have SMEs. ICTI is a very nimble and very proactive SME from Poland, which is contributing. You might know Yes We Hack as one of the leading French startup in cybersecurity nowadays, and those are just two examples among the partners. And finally, also I want to call your attention to the fact that among those partners are national agencies. You can see that ANSSI, which is a French national agency, or CINI in Italy, are part of the consortium, of the core consortium here. That's because we think that we need to pull those resources together. And I remember that I told you that one of the core values for Sparta was diversity. So we wanted to have all of those different people working and discussing together to go forward and invent the new way of doing cybersecurity research in Europe. You should, of course, you can imagine that this can be very time-consuming, especially from a governance standpoint, because you have so many people speaking so many different languages and from so many different backgrounds. And so this is why governance is an important part of what we do in Sparta. So I won't go into what we've been doing over the past 18 months. We've been running since the start of 2019. We've been very busy in publishing, in attending events, in animating the community, in making sure that we're pushing the boundaries forward and out innovating some of our partners and some of the competition. We're roughly halfway there, and as you can see, we have a very detailed roadmap on how we want to move on from a piloting phase to an operational phase, and help the Commission transition and successfully launch their initiatives around the European Cybersecurity Competence Center and the network of national competence centers. So that's the overall introduction of the gift, and I want to take 15 to 20 minutes to talk a bit about the roadmap and give a short focus on this topic. It's going to be quite short because, as you will see, the roadmap in Sparta is one of the key pillars of the project. So there's been a very active work going on this topic. But you'll see there. I'll try to point out some of the salient points that we've put forward as part of the project. Now, first of all, a quick introduction to the roadmap. The overall goal was to provide Europe with a common agenda, common research and innovation roadmap. And it should address different needs, different facets of the need, from industrial to political to societal aspects. The overall, we needed to take into account those key aspects of building a roadmap, from the digital single market to strategic autonomy to citizen security in Europe. And the roadmap should not only provide answers, but it should provide guidelines on how to move forward and explain in detail why these are important topics for strategic autonomy in Europe. So to do this, we've assembled a team. So we're doing this over the whole course of the project, and we've assembled a team that's being led by a Franco-German team. In Germany, TU Munich is one of the leading universities in cybersecurity in Europe, and in France, we're very pleased to have Inaria lead the roadmap design, with a committee that includes, of course, those two people, CNR in Italy and CA as a strategic direction, as part also of the committee. And of course, this involves all of the partners, all of the associates, and we can have a very large amount of discussions to move the roadmap forward with different criteria to make sure that we're not stuck in discussions. And as you can see on the slide here, as this is a very important pillar of Sparta, so we've decided to have a very strong rhythm and to deliver on a very regular basis new results and new points of view on the roadmap. We currently have a 6-month release schedule, and so that means that we're going on our 3rd iteration of the roadmap right now. The roadmap, the design principle that we used for the roadmap, first of all, was to be mission-oriented, meaning that we needed to have a way to identify, to derive from the grand challenge. Cybersecurity is a grand challenge. To derive very specific missions to enable us to get to the result of strategic autonomy, cybersecurity in Europe. So that meant that we were thinking alongside mission-oriented processes with two kinds of key aspects. The first one is what is the result of the mission, and the second one is what is the rhythm of the mission, and how does it scale up. But the roadmap of Sparta is not only, and that's an important part. It's an important point. The roadmap of Sparta is not a roadmap for Sparta. It's a roadmap for Europe. And so it's not just a matter of organizing work in Sparta. It's a matter of organizing work in Europe. And while we're running for a 3-year program, the roadmap itself is a mid to long term, also includes mid to long term objectives. I'll show you in a minute what it looks like concretely in the previous versions. So that's the idea. But before we show the roadmap, we started with a discussion and an analysis of the different roadmaps that were currently existing. And to do this, what we did is we chose a framework. The framework for analysis was the JRC taxonomy. The JRC is the Joint Research Center, which is the research center for the European Commission. And they put out a framework to think about cybersecurity. So we took that framework and we analyzed all of the roadmaps that we could find that were working on cybersecurity. So we had European roadmap, for instance, the roadmap from the PPP, from EXO, was analyzed. But we also had national roadmaps, the German national roadmap, for instance. We also had roadmaps for institutes, the roadmap by Ineria on cybersecurity, for instance. And we did this analysis to try to identify what were the blind spots, what were the spots where no initiative was taking place in Europe, and what were the spots where, on the contrary, there was a lot of activity, and so we had a better picture of what people were currently thinking about when they thought about roadmaps around cybersecurity in Europe. The second thing that we did is we defined what kind of details we wanted in the roadmap. So we had to define the mission of the roadmap itself, but also to provide templates for those different missions. So as I said, we needed to have kind of a way to establish a rhythm, to establish what was concretely expected, to establish the different dimensions of the deliverables that we were expecting as a result of that roadmap and of those missions. And also the dependencies. And when you establish a roadmap, it's not just a matter of saying, I want to do A. You need to be able to say, I want to be able to do A, but before this, I need to tackle B before I can go to A. And so those dependencies, including across the different facets, were an important part of our thinking here. And so these were the first initiatives, and we started, of course, with the 4 programs that I showed you a few minutes ago. The programs working on supervision, evaluation, the design of new systems, and AI. Those 4 programs were the first inputs into the roadmap. They were the starting building blocks. But quite quickly, so just to give you an example on one of those programs, the program on AI that you can see on the slide. What we did to define this program from a roadmap standpoint was to establish first an overall goal. What was the goal of the mission around Sapphire? And to go into the description of the problem, the goal in the end, what was the current status of the state of the art at that moment, and in that status, the main question, for instance, was what has been tried on AI at the moment, and what hasn't been tried and why, and why do we think that's a good idea? Of course, we've had to identify what were the research issues and innovation issues in this mission, the budget, but also as you can see. So those were the grayed out aspect, but as you can see below in the slide, you can see that the industrial aspect and the industrial demand was a key factor here. Understanding why trusted AI was key was a fantastic way for us to say, well, this is obviously an important topic because we need to because it has so much impact on the industrial side, because it also has so much impact on the societal, social aspects of a connected society, and why it has benefits overall for the European Union. What kind of market position could be established from some of the results that we wanted to conduct here. So Overall, these were the first items, and of course we continued by defining how this mission mapped into the different aspects of the JRC taxonomy. So as you can see, AI had impact on theoretical foundations of computer science, but also data security and human legal aspects. You can see that it is also mostly impactful in health, energy, and financial and government sectors. And we also continued and pushed this further in this particular mission and tried to see what kind of sub-goals we could define on education, on certification, and the dependencies between those you can see here on the slide on the bottom right corner. So as you can see, this is a very detailed way of thinking about a mission-oriented roadmap. You see that we went much beyond the basic building blocks. Usually people focus on the first items that are grayed out here, which are important, describing the problem, describing the state of the art, and a few research roadblocks. But we wanted to go further than this and to really show how we could go further here. Now, the overall roadmap, at least at this summer, and so it's still been changing, and we've had quite a few interesting additions over the past few months. But this summer we had the 13 mission programs that you can see on screen here, and I'll give you the slides. Of course, you'll have the slides so you can dive a bit further into the details of what this is. But you can see that we've gone beyond the original research programs that are the red squares and defined new issues and new topics. You can see that there's quantum information technology that is here, obviously, but next generation computing architectures or network security beyond 5G security, trustworthy software, those types of issues also have been added to the roadmap as strategic areas that needed an investigation and where we quantified very precisely the impacts that were expected here. We've also had a different presentations of this roadmap to show what are the dependencies and did a thorough analysis on how this could be implemented. A roadmap is useless if you don't have a good idea of how to trigger that roadmap and to go forward with it. So that's part of the graph that you're seeing on screen here and now. So the next step now is going beyond these roadmaps and going into what we call version 2, which is in a way a large step forward for the roadmap, including the results from brokerage events, from different conferences, and from additional inputs from outside. One of the tools that we will be using to do this. Let me see. Yeah, one of the tools that we'll be using to do this is that we're launching an online questionnaire. We're launching a way to interact with the community online and to have people come back to us with new challenges and areas of the roadmap that we haven't seen. So the idea is not to be spammy, and we don't want to have a one, let's say a one shot, email everyone in the community and say, okay, by end of October, I need to have an answer. No, that's not the way to do this. We know that identifying new challenges is not just a matter of deciding that you want to do this today. It's something that might come along the way. And so we have this continuous online questionnaire where people can, when they have an idea, when they have a new challenge that arises, they're able to come to us and to say, okay, now, in cybersecurity, now I'm seeing a problem with, for instance, with ransomware, and I want to be able to contribute to this. So it's a very powerful tool. We're very much looking forward to what can come out of those inputs and what kind of problems we can tackle here. Of course, COVID-19 has been an interesting period, and the current status is a bit worrying, but still it has not slowed down our efforts in performing a roadmap, quite the contrary. And we've seen that COVID has put a focus on digital sovereignty, on trusted hardware and software, and it has shown that if we don't have a roadmap in Europe on those topics, then in times of crisis, we get lost, and we take decisions based on urgency, some of which are good and some of which are bad. That's not the matter. We don't have time in time of crisis to reprioritize things. So we need to have those roadmaps and those strategic thoughts before the crisis strikes. And so this is one of the key factors in the roadmap, and something that has driven quite a few of the developments lately on this topic. And of course, we've seen the importance of going offline, so that's why the offline questionnaire is now a priority. We also have been doing a lot of in-person events with some very interesting exercises that we defined and that we were able to expose to the attendees, and that allowed us to collect very interesting feedback on the roadmap and on new challenges. But obviously nowadays these are less active. So I want to pause here. I think that leaves us with 10 to 15 minutes to discuss specific topics. I've tried to give you an overview not only of Sparta, which is a very large and very ambitious project, but also to try and give you a quick view in what is one of the pillars of Sparta, which is the roadmap. And that's not even scratching the surface of what we're doing in executing research, thinking about education, thinking about certification, thinking about ethics and societal aspects. But we can come back to this as your questions flow in. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm more than happy to have additional discussions with you now.
Thank you very much, Florent. So are there any questions coming from the public, from the attendees?
Actually, I have one that was sent to me privately in the chat, but I think it's a question to Florent. So I will just copy it to the chat so everybody can see it. Sorry. So it's a question from CSC in Finland. Sorry, I'm trying to copy it. Yep, here it is. So it's a question from Mika Twisku. I'm sorry, Mika, I'm probably mispronouncing your name. So my employer is the host of the LUMI Euro HPC pre-exascale supercomputer. I deal with IAM, AAI domain, grid cloud security, I think. Do you need or have room for a Nordic partner?
Yep. So thank you very much, Mika, for getting in touch. There's definitely room for partners here, and I've shown a bit. I tried to show in the introductory slides how people could get associated with us. That means that we have different levels of association. Some of the SMEs, for instance, that are involved in Sparta just don't have the means to be very committed, for instance, to attending roadmap meetings or doing technical work. They just want to be involved and informed of what is going on at the political level in Europe. So that's one level. And if you're able to commit more and to come and help us work on some of the key technologies for European strategic autonomy, you're more than welcome to come in. The right address for this is the contact address on the Sparta website, so contact@sparta.eu. Shoot us an email. We'd be more than happy to discuss with you. The partnership director of Sparta will get in touch, and you can have a few discussions on what is the best way to involve the LUMI inside the work that we're doing. I didn't mention it during the talk, but Sparta is also building a federation of infrastructure for cybersecurity. That means that we're pulling together cyber rangers, we're pulling together evaluation tools and facilities so that we can have a central repository and a means to have a look at what is available in Europe in terms of capacity. And I do believe that there's, especially in terms of high performance computing, I do believe that there's a lot of added value in Europe around this particular topic. And if we have ideas on how we can leverage that value for European strategic autonomy and cybersecurity, I think that would be a key conversation to have. So thanks for the question, Nika. I appreciate this.
So I think this would lead me to another question, Florent. From your point of view, what do you think would be, with your expertise, the main topics in your roadmap which are also interesting or highly relevant to the HPC community?
Well, I see two areas for, and you'll have to excuse me. I'm not a specialist of HPC, so if I do any missteps and if I mispronounce or misrepresent you, please feel free to correct me. I'd be more than happy to engage in the conversation here. But I see two aspects from a cybersecurity standpoint that might make sense. The first one is high performance computing as a user of security. How do you secure the access to your platforms? How can you ensure information security, for instance, including during computation phases or during storage? Those types of issues of the security of an HPC platform is a first topic of interest. And as you know, those topics are open topics. We don't have definite answers for this, and we only have, at the moment, a state of the art which is moving quickly, and where the first solutions exist, but there's still room for improvement and still a lot of room for innovation. That's the first part of the answer. The second part, where I can feel, or I can intuit that there's a connection, would be, on the other hand, what can HPC do for cybersecurity, and in particular, what types of problems in cybersecurity are amenable to key breakthroughs by using high performance computing, a bit in the same way that high performance computing was key in medical research to be able to better understand how we design new proteins and new medicine. There are several areas in cybersecurity where we think that the exploration of such a complex set of problems and problem space is something that's where we can leverage the capacities of HPC. The reason why I say this is that in cybersecurity, the systems that we're trying to protect, which is a composition of hardware and software, those systems are immensely complicated. You have to understand that even just a simple smartphone already has millions of lines of code and very complex hardware running. And so if you want to have a representation and a way to explore, even sometimes to simulate what is going on in those systems, then you need to have both a modeling power, a computing power, and a storage power that is quite significant. So at the moment, the way at the moment that specialists in cybersecurity are working is that they're isolating and focusing on specific slices inside those systems. But this is no longer something that is possible, especially as those systems continue to grow exponentially. So we now need to have, I think one of the next frontier is to see what we can leverage from HPC, for instance, and from big data, from AI, to break this and to go beyond this, slice by slice type of approach to cybersecurity.
Thank you very much. Pascala, any more questions on your side?
No, we got no other question. The presentation must have been totally crystal clear.
Right, it's Friday and it's right after lunch, so I hope everyone's still awake.
Yeah.
Don't be negative.
No, you also asked a question in the chat, make it. I think is the specific dangers for AI is quite. There are a number of them. There are two things about AI that are a bit disturbing. The first one is that AI is using data to be able to function. And so what you're doing is basically learning, and in some cases, continuously learning to be able to adapt the behavior of a computer system. And that means that you have to learn on specific data. And the first problem of AI is that, and of cybersecurity in this topic is, how is that learning data handled? And you see this when people ask questions about, how does Google handle my requests or my emails? These are truly important questions about AI that we need to build some trust on how the data that is used to train the AI is being secured and is being used in an ethical and societal acceptable way. And this is a cybersecurity topic, among other things. So that's the first problem. The second problem about cybersecurity and AI is because AI is using a learning mechanism to learn new behaviors, it's pretty much a black box. And so people are having a very hard time. It's starting to change, but over the past few years, people had no idea how an AI took a decision. Why such a behavior from an AI was being shown, and how that AI came to that behavior. So it's a black box. And in cybersecurity, black boxes are dangerous because you don't know what kind of dangerous behaviors can lie in those black boxes, and how an attacker can exploit those dangerous behaviors. So one of the main issues with AI is evaluation, auditing of an AI is not possible nowadays, and it's beginning to be a topic. And we're very proud in Sparta to be exploring, as part of the Sapphire program that I showed you, some of the first key ways that we can build auditable and explainable AIs for cybersecurity.
Yeah, this is definitely true. When you mentioned that you look really at explainable and fair AI, I was really surprised, because for me, this goes way beyond the scope of what I would call traditional cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, but it's something that for us it's quite emblematic. The scope of traditional cybersecurity is very much technology focused, and we have a lot of very good people, very technology focused in Sparta. But what we wanted to do, and what is remarkable, and what the roadmap committee has done, is that they've been able to not only do that very specific, very technical work, but also frame it in a way that makes sense from an ethical and societal standpoint, and that's very key. So we've had more or less successes in the roadmap. Some programs are not as strongly tied to concrete results for the citizen, but we've strived to do this as much as we could, and that's, I think, one of the novelties of the approach in Sparta, is that we've been able to engage with the technical community and have them think profoundly about what are the values they're defending when they're performing cybersecurity technical acts. And I think that's something that is quite remarkable, at least from my experience.
Thank you. Sorry, I have two questions coming in. Well, first, one comment, very clear and interesting. Thanks. That's from Marisa at EngineSoft. So it's nice to have positive feedback. And I have two questions from Thierry Bidot, but he entered them in the private chat initially, so I have put them in the public chat. From Thierry Bidot, does Sparta have HPC partners into the network? And the second question is, does Sparta have presently some specific actions relative to HPC?
So I hope I'm not wrong here, but I think so. We have partners which have some ties with the HPC community. I don't imagine that partners such as SAP or Leonardo or Thales has no ties with the HPC community. That's not true. I think that's something that is definitely something that exists. The people that we're interacting with, of course, are mostly cybersecurity specialists first, and then maybe secondly, have some colleagues that might be interested and involved in HPC. But I think those partners, we have those partners who are interested in HPC or who are involved in certain of the national or European initiatives around HPC. Of course, since we also have the governance, ANSSI is not an HPC partner, for instance, in France, but you see them more and more because as I said, because we see cybersecurity moving towards AI, big data, big compute, big storage. You see that ANSSI more and more, for instance, is talking about sharing data. Sharing data sets, computing on those large data sets, etc. So I assume that that more and more partners from Sparta will become interested, if they're not already, in HPC tech and in how they can use the simulation capacities, for instance, of HPC to go further in what they're doing in cyber. In terms of specific actions related to HPC. I assume you're mentioning the programs and the research programs that we're running, and so at the moment, what we do have, and perhaps the most compute-intensive program that we have, is the program on AI, because we have a lot of very AI-specific compute tasks, very much focused on GPU type of tasks and type of compute. But however, we see that we also have, for instance, when we do supervision, the first operational program in Sparta, supervision means that we have some high level of computers being required to perform supervision and to perform the analysis of, for instance, threats in the environment. Those at the moment, I would not say that these are HPC per se. We're looking at more at clusters, mid-sized clusters, to be able to operate. But you see that this is the direction that they're taking overall. So at the moment, they're content and they're satisfied with operating on mid-sized compute clusters. They're not yet to the point where they need high performance computing in clusters, but this is definitely the road that they're taking. I hope this answers your question, Tian.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Florent.
Thank you.
So if there are no more questions for the time being, Pascal, you want to take over?
No, and I think it's time to close.
Yes.
Well, if you think of more questions later on, you can always send them to office at ETP4HPC.
Sure, and if you have any questions, Sparta-specific questions, as I said, we have a link on our website. Please send us emails. You can tweet at us. You can engage with us. That's more than welcome. Really be happy to looking forward to continue this discussion with you and to see how we can build additional synergies between our communities. I think that there's a wonderful opportunity in Europe here at the intersection of those topics.
So Florent, thank you very much for this talk, this presentation, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the talk. That's a message from Thierry Bidot.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. So once you leave today's webinar, you will. Sorry, we have a problem here. Okay, once you leave the webinar, you will receive a little survey to give us feedback on today's presentation. And next webinar, next ETP4HPC webinar is on the 25th of November. And it will be, it's organized by our industrial users work group. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Pascal, and bye to everybody. Thank you.
So we hope to talk to you later in November. Thank you.
Pascal, c'est arrêté?